What you're about to hear will leave you speechless. The melody you are hearing was born in the exact moment a man lost everything. This is not just a song. It is a wail. It is the sound of a spirit that could not be broken, even when the chains were locked. I promise you, what you are about to witness will make you question the power of music and the echo of injustice. Because on that scorching Louisiana afternoon in 1843, when the notes first spilled from Kofi's banjo, they weren't just entertainment. They were a prophecy of the storm to come. To those who owned him, Kofi was an asset. A prize. Master Thornton called him the most cheerful piece of property he owned. Unlike the others in the field, Kofi, when he held his banjo, seemed to forget his sorrow. He seemed, to them, to be happy. While Thornton's guests sat on the veranda, sipping their whiskey, Kofi would play. He played joyful-sounding tunes, fast melodies blended with the rhythms of his homeland. This was his survival. This was his mask. But the mask was also a weapon. While the white men heard simple entertainment, Kofi's fingers were speaking a different language. His music was a map. He was transmitting coded messages to the field hands. The plucking of a certain string, a specific rhythm, it meant go to the water to throw the dogs off the scent. It meant follow the North Star. It meant be careful tonight. The overseer is watching. His music was the invisible whisper of rebellion. But the true source of Kofi's music wasn't rebellion. It was love. His wife AC and his 6-year-old daughter, Naya. When he stepped into that small, cramped cabin at night, the banjo would slide from his shoulder, and Nia would run, laughing, to wrap herself around his legs. That small room, filled with the smell of whatever meager food Essie had prepared, was Kofi's heaven in the middle of hell. Essie was the only one who understood the silent power of his music. She knew, just by listening, which melody was to distract the master, which was to soothe his own pain, and which was to secretly tell his daughter the stories of her grandfather in Africa. The song he hummed while his fingers traced the patterns in Nia's hair was their secret oath. One day, they would be free. But they didn't know that one day was never going to come. It happened on a Tuesday. It started like any other day. Kofi was on the veranda of the big house, playing as usual. Master Thornton was in high spirits, celebrating a significant deal with a wealthy merchant who had come up from Mississippi. Kofi played. He smiled his wide, practiced smile. But as he played, he noticed the merchant's eyes. They were not on him. They were lingering. They were watching Essie as she served water. They were watching little Nia, who was hiding shyly behind her mother's skirt. A cold, sick dread entered Kofi's stomach. It was a feeling he knew too well. He sped up the melody, trying to be more energetic, more joyful, trying to pull the attention back to himself. But it was too late. When Master Thornton finished his laugh, he slapped the merchant on the back. He announced loudly how impressed the merchant was with Acey's good breeding and Nia's potential as a fine house servant. The deal was done. Kofi's fingers froze on the strings of the banjo. The music stopped. The sudden silence was deafening. Every head on the veranda turned to him. Kofi's practiced smile didn't fade. It cracked, it froze on his face. A grotesque mask of horror. The merchant had purchased Essie and Nia to take back to his plantation in Mississippi. But not Kofi. Just them. In that single suspended moment, the cheerful slave died. All that was left was raw, unfiltered agony. He wanted to scream. He wanted to beg, to fall on his knees. But his throat was paralyzed. He heard Essie's gasp, which was more of a choked sob. He heard Nia start to cry, not understanding, just knowing something was wrong. When two overseers moved toward his family, Kofi's survival instinct was overwhelmed by his love. He did the one thing he was never, ever supposed to do. He acted. He threw his banjo. It clattered loudly on the wooden planks. He lunged toward his family. It was his first and last open act of defiance. The two men were on him in an instant. They were large, and he was one. He was thrown to the ground. His face was pressed into the dusty, packed earth. He was forced to watch, helpless, as his wife and his daughter were dragged, kicking and crying toward the merchant's wagon. Essie's eyes locked with his until the very last second. Her look was not just terror. It was love. It was apology. It was a final, terrible goodbye. Nia was screaming, "Baba! Baba!" The wagon door closed. As it began to roll away, the only sounds left in the world were the grinding of the wheels and his daughter's fading cries. And in that exact moment, pinned to the ground, with dirt in his mouth and his soul torn from his body, a new melody was born inside him. It sounded nothing like the songs he played for the master. It was not joyful. It was not a coded message. It was the sound of a man being ripped in half. That night, Kofi did not eat. He did not drink. He did not speak. He sat in the corner of his empty cabin and picked up his banjo. When he began to play, the other slaves in their cabins nearby stopped talking. They huddled in the dark and listened. The melody that came from Kofi's cabin was so profound, so full in its sorrow, that it spoke for every one of them. It was the song of his loss, of Essie's departure, of Nia's stolen future. It was a melody of pure pain. He would play it every night until his fingers bled. He would teach it to the others. He would call it the Kofi's lament, or the broken heart to. He would ensure that even if his family was gone, the proof of their love and the proof of the crime committed against them would survive. That melody, his final act of resistance, would echo down through the generations. Waiting. New York City, 170 years later. The air is cold. The tiles of the 42nd Street station are stained. The roar of the trains is a constant thunder. Thousands of people rush by, faces buried in phones, lost in their own worlds. And in a corner, cutting through that chaos, is a melody. Kofi sits melody. This time it's not from a banjo. It's from a saxophone. And the man playing it is Samuel. Samuel, born in Lagos, Nigeria, Kofi's blood runs in his veins. Though he does not know the full story, he is a descendant, carrying the legacy. He doesn't know why his grandmother in Nigeria called this tune the broken heart Ata, or why she said it must only be played when the soul is heavy. He only knows that when he plays it, people finally stop. Samuel was a musical genius. His journey had taken him from a small church choir in Lagos to the land of opportunity. But America was not what he dreamed it would be. This was Kofi's struggle, reimagined. By day, Samuel was invisible. He worked construction. He wore a hard hat, and his hands, which could make a saxophone weep, were calloused from hauling bricks. The foreman didn't bother to learn his name. He just shouted, "Hey Africa, get over here," or "Move it, Africa." Samuel would swallow the humiliation. It tasted like dust and metal. At night, he washed dishes at a restaurant, the steam scalding his face, the sound of laughter from the dining room a world away. And after that, he would take his saxophone to the subway. He played for hours, his case open for a few dollars. He was a ghost. People threw in change without looking at him. Some sneered, telling him to get a real job. He would watch as white musicians, playing classical music, were applauded. But his music, his soul, was just background noise to them. He wasn't playing just for money. He was playing to remind himself that he was alive. Unlike Kofi's mask, Samuel's music was his shield and his sword. Every note was a response to the racism, to the second-class treatment. Every high note from his saxophone was a scream. "I am here, you have to hear me." But the real shock was yet to come. One night, as he played the broken heart Ata, a man in a $1,000 suit stopped. He didn't just stop, he listened. He wasn't like the others. His head was tilted, his expression one of pure shock and awe. Samuel finished the song. The echo faded against the rumble of an approaching train. The station was quiet for a beat. The man walked forward. He extended a hand. He told Samuel his name was Marcus Thorne. He was the CEO of a major record label. and he told Samuel that he was the most raw, undiscovered talent he had ever heard in his life. Samuel couldn't believe it. He thought it was a joke. But the man gave him a card, a heavy black business card. He told Samuel to come to his office the next day. That night, Samuel went home and stared at the card for hours. He was floating. For the first time, he felt hope. For the first time, he believed the American dream might be real. He took off his construction uniform, threw it in the trash, and swore he would never wear it again. His ancestors' melody of pain had finally opened the door to success. What Samuel didn't know was that this door led to a new kind of plantation, a gilded cage. The record label office was like a different planet. It was all glass and steel, high above the city. Marcus Thorne was warm, welcoming. He offered Samuel coffee. He told him he was going to be a star. Samuel was given a contract. It was thick, full of legal language he didn't understand. He was too excited to question it. He just wanted to play. He signed it. At first, it was heaven. He was given an advance. A beautiful, empty apartment with a view, new clothes, studio time. He was working with famous producers. He was the label's new project. He was a success. But then the changes began. They were small at first. The producers started adding heavy drum machines to his music. They auto-tuned his saxophone, a sacrilege. They told him his African sound was good, but it needed to be more palatable for a global audience. Marcus Thorne, the man who had discovered him, was now distant. His compliments were replaced with commands. The trap was sprung. Samuel realized he had no control. He was an employee. The label didn't want his music. They wanted to package it. They owned his recordings. They owned his name. They owned him. The ultimate betrayal came when they discussed his debut single. Marcus wanted him to use the Broken Heart Ata. Samuel was thrilled. He thought, finally they understood. But Marcus played him a demo. A producer had taken Kofi's melody, that sacred, painful song, and turned it into a generic, upbeat pop dance track. They had a famous pop starlet lined up to sing meaningless lyrics over it. Samuel felt the blood drain from his face. He told them no. He explained, his voice shaking, that this song was his family's history. It was sacred. It was not for this. Marcus Thorne's smile vanished. The friendly CEO was gone. In his place was a master. Marcus leaned across his massive desk. He told Samuel that he didn't ask for his opinion. He was telling him the label had invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in him. He was no longer some guy in the subway. He was a brand, and the brand would do as it was told. He reminded Samuel that the contract he signed gave the label full creative control. Samuel refused. He stood up. He said they could have everything else, but not that song. Marcus laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. He told Samuel that if he refused, the label would sue him for breach of contract. They would take his apartment. They would take his money. They would take his visa. He threatened to have him deported. Marcus stood up, his voice dropping to a whisper. He told Samuel he made him, and he could unmake him. He told him he would be back on the street, back in the construction site, before he could even blink. Samuel was trapped. He was financially and legally enslaved. He was just as powerless as Kofi, pinned to the dirt. The next few weeks were torture. Samuel was isolated. He was forced into the studio to record the pop version of the song. Every note he played felt like a betrayal. He was empty. The success he had achieved was a prison. The label announced a massive launch party, a gala event where Samuel would debut his new single, performing it live with the pop star. Marcus made it clear, if Samuel embarrassed him, if he tried anything, he would personally destroy his life. The night of the gala arrived. Samuel was dressed in a painfully expensive, tight-fitting suit that felt like a costume. He was backstage, his saxophone cold in his hands. He could hear the murmur of the industry crowd, the clinking of champagne glasses. He felt Kofi's despair. He felt the humiliation of the construction site. He felt the cold indifference of the subway. He had come all this way only to sell his ancestor's soul for a gilded cage. He was about to walk on stage. The pop star was smiling at him, ready to go. And that's when he remembered his grandmother's words. You only play this song when the soul is heavy. His soul had never been heavier. The lights hit him. He walked onto the stage. The crowd applauded politely. Marcus Thorne was in the front row, smiling, nodding, like a master pleased with his prize. The pre-recorded pop track began to play. A deafening, synthetic beat. The pop star grabbed the microphone and sang the first vapid line. Samuel raised his saxophone to his lips. He looked at Marcus. He saw the cold, controlling eyes. And then he looked past him. He looked at the entire room of empty faces. He thought of Kofi. He thought of Essa. He thought of Nia. He lowered his saxophone. The pop star looked at him, confused. The track continued to play. Samuel stepped forward and held up his hand. The music director, shocked, cut the sound. The entire ballroom went silent. You could hear a pin drop. The pop star stared at him, mortified. Marcus Thorne's smile was gone. His face turned to thunder. He was signaling to security. Samuel stepped to the center microphone. He was shaking. He spoke, his voice echoing in the silent room. He told them he couldn't play that song, but he would play them his song. Before security could reach the stage, he put the saxophone to his lips. He closed his eyes. And he played. He played the Broken Heart Ahata. Not the pop version. He played it pure, raw, acoustic. He played Kofi's melody. He poured every ounce of his humiliation into that horn. He poured the racism of the foreman, the indifference of the subway, the exploitation of the label, and he poured the 170-year-old pain of his ancestor. The melody ripped through the ballroom. It was not entertainment. It was a confession. It was a cry for justice. It was the most powerful, beautiful, and terrifying sound they had ever heard. The crowd was frozen. People were crying. They didn't know what it was, but they knew it was real. Security stopped. They didn't know what to do. Marcus Thorne was white with rage. He was screaming, "Get him off!" But someone in the back of the room was filming it. Samuel played until the final, mournful note echoed and died. He opened his eyes. He set the saxophone down, and he walked off the stage. The video went viral before the night was even over. The headline wasn't "Pop Star Fails," it was "Artist Defies Label, Reclaims His Soul." Marcus Thorne followed through on his threats. Samuel was sued. He was dropped from the label. He lost the apartment. He lost everything. He was, just as Marcus promised, back in the subway. He went to the 42nd Street station, opened his case, and began to play. But this time, something was different. People stopped. They knew him. They recognized the song. A crowd formed. They filmed him. They put money in his case. Not change, but $20 bills, $50 bills. He wasn't a ghost anymore. A few days later, a woman approached him. She wasn't a CEO. She was the head of a small, independent, Black-owned music label. She told him she had been watching him for months. She told him his performance at the gala was the bravest thing she had ever seen. She offered him a new contract, a fair one. She told him they would help him fight Marcus Thorne's lawsuit. And they did. They won. The original contract was thrown out on a technicality of coercive signing. Samuel released his first album. He called it the Atha. The centerpiece was the Broken Heart Atha, recorded with a traditional Nigerian orchestra. It wasn't a global pop hit. It didn't play in dance clubs. It won a Grammy. We see Samuel walking onto the Grammy stage. The lights are blinding. He is not wearing the suit the label gave him. He is wearing a magnificent, flowing Nigerian abada. He holds the golden trophy. He looks at it, and for the first time he truly understands his ancestors' journey. He speaks to the crowd. He tells them his story. He tells them about his ancestor, who had his family stolen, but whose song survived. He holds the Grammy high. He dedicates it to Kofi, to AC, to Nia, to all the voices that were silenced, but whose melodies refused to die. Kofi's banjo was silenced by a whip, but Samuel's saxophone was heard by the world. The chains changed form, but the soul's song remained unbroken.